During Sunday lunch, my daughter asked me, "Can you leave, Mom? We want this moment just with family." I left. But first I called my lawyer and changed my will. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. The aroma of pot roast filled my kitchen as I carefully arranged the china plates on the dining table, the good ones with the delicate blue flowers that I only used for our Sunday family lunches. At 68, these gatherings had become the highlight of my week. I smoothed the tablecloth, adjusted the silverware one last time, and checked the roast. Perfect. Mom, you really outdid yourself today, my son-in-law Marcus said as he helped himself to seconds. I beamed at the compliment. I'd spent all morning preparing Aria's favorite foods, the pot roast, scalloped potatoes, and homemade rolls that my daughter had loved since childhood. Aria, my only daughter, sat across from me, typing something on her phone as she had been throughout most of the meal. At 45, she still had the same determined set to her jaw that she'd had as a child. My grandchildren, Zach and Emma, were quieter than usual, occasionally exchanging glances with their parents. Something felt off, but I pushed the thought away. These Sunday lunches were precious to me, especially since Frank passed away 5 years ago. The empty chair at the head of the table still felt wrong, even after all this time. "Gran, this food is amazing," Zach said, his 15-year-old frame somehow always hungry despite having already cleared his plate twice. I reached over to squeeze his hand. "Thank you, sweetheart." The table fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the clink of silverware against plates. Aria finally put her phone down and cleared her throat. "So, Mom," she began, her voice carrying that tone I'd come to recognize, the one she used when she was about to say something I wouldn't like. "We've been thinking." Marcus shifted in his seat. Emma, my 12-year-old granddaughter, suddenly became very interested in her napkin. "Yes," I prompted, my hands instinctively tightening around my water glass. "Well, after lunch we were hoping to have a bit of family time. Just to discuss some things." I looked around at their faces, waiting for clarification. "Of course, dear. What would you like to talk about?" Aria exchanged a look with Marcus before continuing. "Actually, Mom, we were hoping to have this conversation without you. Just family." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Just family. Without you." "I don't understand," I said, though the truth was dawning with painful clarity. "I am family." Aria sighed, that impatient sound I'd heard so many times before. "Mom, it's just some private matters we need to discuss. Financial stuff, future plans. Nothing for you to worry about." "Nothing for me to worry about," I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "You can go watch your shows or something," Aria continued, already turning back to her phone. "We won't be long." I looked at their faces, Aria dismissive, Marcus uncomfortable but complicit, my grandchildren embarrassed. They were waiting for me to leave my own dining table in my own home, so they could have family time without me. Wordlessly I stood up. My legs felt unsteady as I walked to the kitchen, deposited my plate in the sink, and then continued upstairs to my bedroom. Behind me I could hear their voices immediately drop to whispers. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at my hands. Hands that had worked 60-hour weeks after Frank died to keep our home. Hands that had changed my grandchildren's diapers, prepared countless meals, and written checks to help Aria and Marcus when they were struggling financially. And now I wasn't family. A strange calm settled over me. With surprising steadiness, I reached for my phone and dialed a number I rarely called. "Hello, Richard. It's Kathy Winters," I said when my lawyer answered. "I need to make some changes to my will." "Yes, it's urgent. Can I come in tomorrow?" After hanging up, I sat very still, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter from downstairs. My family enjoying themselves without me. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, a deep ache in my chest, but alongside it was something new. A resolve I hadn't felt in years. They might not consider me family, but this was still my house. My life. And for the first time in too long, I was going to start living it for myself. Downstairs, I could hear Aria's voice rising, something about what we'll do with this place when the time comes. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The time was coming, all right. Just not in the way my daughter expected. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Aria's voice. "We were hoping to have this conversation without you. Just family. The words kept repeating, each echo more painful than the last. At 4:30 a.m., I gave up and made myself a cup of tea. Sitting at my kitchen table in the dark, I watched as the first hints of dawn slowly brightened the window. This house had been our home for 43 years. Frank and I had bought it when Aria was just 2 years old, stretching ourselves financially because we wanted a yard for her to play in and good schools nearby. The photo on my refrigerator caught my eye. Frank holding a 7-year-old Aria on his shoulders at the beach, both of them laughing. He'd been gone for 5 years now, taken suddenly by a heart attack. I remember the funeral clearly, how Aria had been too busy coordinating the reception to sit with me. "Someone has to handle things, Mom," she'd said. After Frank died, everything changed. I'd been a high school English teacher, planning to retire with Frank when we turned 65. Instead, I worked 3 more years to ensure financial stability. During those years, I watched Aria and Marcus buy a bigger house, new cars, take luxury vacations, while I was helping them with the kids and lending them money when their spending exceeded their income. "It's just until my commission comes in," Aria would say. Those loans were never repaid. The sound of my phone ringing pulled me from my thoughts. At 6 a.m., a call could only mean bad news. It was my son, David. "Mom? You're up early," he said. His voice clear despite being 3 time zones away in Seattle. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. "What's got you calling at this hour?" "Time difference," he chuckled. "It's 9 a.m. here. I'm about to go into a meeting but wanted to check in. How was the family lunch?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. David had moved away 10 years ago after a falling out with his sister. They barely spoke now, and I was always careful not to take sides. "It was enlightening," I finally said. "Mom? What happened?" His voice sharpened with concern. I found myself telling him everything. Aria's dismissal, the whispered conversation, my call to the lawyer. David was silent for so long I thought we'd lost the connection. "I'm sorry, Mom," he finally said, his voice tight. "You didn't deserve that." "It's opened my eyes," I admitted. "I've been blind to so many things." After promising to call later, we hung up. I sat looking at the old wooden recipe box on my counter, the one that had belonged to my mother. Inside was more than just recipes. There were records of every significant loan I'd made to Aria and Marcus over the years. Nearly $87,000 since Frank died. Money from his life insurance, money from my retirement savings, money I'd planned to use for the travel Frank and I had always dreamed of. My meeting with Richard, my lawyer, was scheduled for 10 a.m. I spent the morning gathering financial documents, property papers, and making notes. By the time I walked into his office, I was calm and resolute. "This is quite a change, Kathy," Richard said after I explained my wishes. "Are you certain?" "More certain than I've been about anything in years," I replied. On my way home, my phone buzzed with a text from Aria. "Coming by to pick up Emma's soccer equipment. Also need to talk to you about something." I knew what that something would be. Another loan, another financial emergency. But today would be different. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Aria's car already there. She never did respect boundaries. Inside, I found her in my home office going through my filing cabinet. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than she'd ever heard it. She jumped slightly but recovered quickly. "Looking for Emma's birth certificate. We need it for her passport." "In my financial files?" I raised an eyebrow. She closed the drawer with a shrug. "I couldn't remember where you kept it." "You should have asked," I said, setting my purse down. "Or waited for me to get home." "Where were you anyway?" she asked, deflecting. "I had an appointment." I didn't elaborate. Aria shifted tactics, her expression softening in a way I recognized all too well. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Here it comes, I thought. Marcus and I found the perfect vacation property. It's an investment opportunity that won't last. We just need a little help with the down payment. As she spoke, outlining why this $20,000 loan was such a good idea, I thought about all the Sunday lunches, all the babysitting, all the checks I'd written. I thought about being excluded from family time in my own home. "No," I said, interrupting her mid-sentence. "What?" "No, Aria. I won't be lending you any more money." She stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. Mom, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. And my answer is no. The look on her face shifted from confusion to anger. Is this about yesterday? Are you punishing me because I wanted a private conversation with my kids? This isn't punishment, Aria. This is me finally setting boundaries. Her eyes narrowed. You've changed, she said accusingly. Yes, I agreed. I have. And as I watched her storm out of my house, slamming the door behind her, I realized that was absolutely true. I had changed, I just wished it hadn't taken me so long. 2 weeks passed without a word from Aria. No Sunday lunch invitations, no calls about the grandchildren, not even a text. I told myself it didn't matter, but 68 years of maternal instinct doesn't vanish overnight. I missed Zach and Emma terribly. I was watering the hydrangeas Frank had planted along our front walkway when a familiar silver SUV pulled into my driveway. Marcus stepped out, looking uncomfortable as always when he had to face me alone. Kathy, he nodded, keys jingling nervously in his hand. Hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said, setting down my watering can. What brings you by? Aria sent me to pick up some photo albums. Emma needs family pictures for a school project. I raised an eyebrow. She couldn't call and ask herself? Marcus shifted his weight. You know how she gets. She's still upset about. Well, because I wouldn't give her money for a vacation home? My voice was calm, but I could feel a flicker of indignation rising. Investment property, he corrected automatically, then shrugged. Listen, I'm just the messenger. Can I get the albums? I invited him in, directing him to the bookshelf where I kept the family photos. While he browsed, I made coffee more out of habit than hospitality. Black 2 sugars, right? I called. You remembered. Marcus sounded surprised as he accepted the mug. He'd been my son-in-law for 20 years, and he was surprised I knew how he took his coffee. He sat at my kitchen table, leafing through an album from when Aria was in high school. She was something else even then, he murmured. Headstrong, I agreed. Just like her father. We fell into an awkward silence. Marcus checked his watch. I should probably get going. Of course. I'll get you a bag for those albums. I went to the hall closet, hunting for a tote bag sturdy enough for the heavy books. As I rummaged, I heard Marcus's phone ring. Hey babe. His voice carried from the kitchen. Yeah, I'm still here. Just getting the albums. A pause. No, she seems fine. Normal. Didn't mention anything about it. Another pause. I don't know, Aria. Maybe she doesn't know yet. Or maybe it's not happening after all. I froze, straining to hear. Well, I'm not going to ask her if she knows we're planning to sell her house as soon as we inherit it. That's not exactly casual conversation. My blood ran cold. I gripped the closet door frame to steady myself. Yes, I know she's old, but she could live another 20 years, Marcus continued, his voice dropping lower. No, I don't want to put her in a home either, but you're the one who keeps saying we need the money from selling this place. I must have made a noise because Marcus suddenly went silent. When I returned to the kitchen, bag in hand, his face was flushed. Found one, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the pounding in my chest. Great, thanks. He shoved the albums into the bag, avoiding my eyes. I should go. Aria's waiting. I walked him to the door, forcing a smile. Tell my grandchildren I missed them. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I sank onto the sofa, my legs no longer able to support me. They were waiting for me to die so they could sell my home. My daughter was planning my future, or lack thereof, without any consideration for what I might want. The telephone rang, shattering the silence. It was Richard, my lawyer. Kathy, I've prepared the documents we discussed. You can come in any time to sign them. I'll be there tomorrow morning, I said, my determination solidified by what I just overheard. And Richard? I want to add something else. After explaining my new request, I hung up and sat in the gathering darkness of my living room. The walls around me held decades of memories. Frank carrying me over the threshold as newlyweds, Aria taking her first steps by that window, David building a model airplane at the dining table. This wasn't just a house. It was the physical embodiment of my life story. And my daughter was waiting to cash it in. I made myself a cup of tea and carried it upstairs to my bedroom. From the bottom drawer of my dresser, I retrieved a small wooden box that Frank had made for me on our 10th anniversary. Inside were mementos I'd saved over the years, ticket stubs from concerts, pressed flowers, and a folded piece of paper I hadn't looked at in years. It was a bucket list Frank and I had created before his diagnosis. Places we wanted to see, things we wanted to do in our retirement. Dreams that had been deferred and ultimately abandoned when he got sick. I traced my finger over his handwriting. Greek islands. Learn to paint. Drive cross-country in an RV. Simple dreams that had seemed so attainable then. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emma. Miss you, Gran. Mom says we can't come for Sunday lunch anymore because you're mad at her. Are you? I stared at the message, tears welling in my eyes. Aria was using my grandchildren as pawns. I'm not mad at anyone, sweetheart. I texted back. I miss you and Zach very much. Maybe we can have lunch another day. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Mom says I shouldn't text you anymore. Sorry. Love you. I set my phone down, my hand trembling. In that moment, something hardened inside me. Aria thought she was punishing me by keeping the children away, but all she was doing was showing me exactly who she was, who she had always been. Tomorrow I would sign the new will. And then I would start making some long overdue changes to my life. The next morning, I drove to Richard's office with a clarity of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The paralegal showed me into his wood-paneled office where he waited with a stack of documents. Are you absolutely certain about this, Kathy? Richard asked as I signed the last page of my revised will. It's quite a significant change. I've never been more certain, I replied, my pen steady as I signed my name. They've made their intentions clear. I'm simply responding in kind. He nodded, shuffling the papers into a folder. Well, it's all legal and binding now. They can contest it, of course, but with the documentation you've provided and the recording we've made today explaining your reasoning, they won't have much ground to stand on. Thank you, Richard. I stood to leave, then hesitated. There's one more thing. I'd like your advice on something personal. Half an hour later, I left his office with not only a new will but a plan. A roadmap for reclaiming my life. My first stop was the bank, where I opened a new account at a different institution from where Aria and I had shared accounts since she was in college. I transferred most of my funds, leaving only enough in the old account to avoid raising immediate suspicions. Next, I drove to the community center where I'd once volunteered before Aria convinced me that my time was better spent helping with her children. The receptionist remembered me. Kathy Winters. It's been years, she exclaimed. What brings you back? I'm looking to get involved again, I said. And I was wondering if Carol's watercolor class is still running. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she confirmed, handing me a schedule. She'll be thrilled to see you. Painting had been on Frank's and my bucket list. It was time to start checking things off. On my way home, I stopped at a travel agency, old-fashioned perhaps, but I wanted to talk to a real person, not just book something online. The young woman who helped me seemed surprised by my interest in solo travel for seniors, but quickly warmed to the task. Greece in September is perfect, she assured me. The crowds are gone, but the weather is still beautiful. I left with brochures, feeling a flutter of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. The Greek islands had been at the top of our list. Frank wouldn't be with me physically, but I'd carry him in my heart. When I arrived home, there was a message on my answering machine from David. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation. Call me back when you can. I dialed his number, settling into my favorite armchair. Hey, Mom, he answered on the first ring. How are you holding up? Better than expected, I admitted. I've made some decisions. I told him about the will, the travel plans, the painting class. About overhearing Marcus's phone conversation and Emma's text. I'm not surprised, David sighed. Aria's always been entitled. Remember when Dad got sick? She was more concerned about whether his condition would affect her wedding plans than about him. I made excuses for her, I said, the realization washing over me. I've always made excuses for her. We all did, David replied. Dad especially. There was a pause, then David spoke again, his voice hesitant. Mom, I've been meaning to ask you something. Would you consider coming to visit us in Seattle? Lisa and the kids have been asking about you and, well, it's been too long. My throat tightened. I'd only met my daughter-in-law and their children twice, once at their wedding 8 years ago, and briefly at Frank's funeral. The distance between Seattle and Boston wasn't just geographical. Aria had made sure of that, constantly finding ways to create friction between David and me. I'd love that, I managed. Maybe after Greece? We talked for nearly an hour, making plans, reconnecting in a way we hadn't in years. By the time we hung up, I felt lighter, as if a burden I'd been carrying had begun to lift. Over the next few weeks, I systematically reclaimed pieces of myself. I rejoined my old book club. I started walking 3 miles every morning in the park where Frank and I used to stroll. I enrolled in a computer class at the library to better navigate travel websites and online banking. Aria called exactly once during this time, her voice tight with barely contained frustration. Mom, Emma's birthday is next weekend. She's asking if you're coming to her party. Of course I am, I said. I wouldn't miss it. Fine, she replied. Sunday at 2. And Mom? Try not to bring up any unpleasantness. It's a children's party. I bit back a retort. I'll be there with bells on. The day of Emma's party arrived warm and sunny. I'd wrapped her gift, a watercolor set and a sketchbook, with care, adding a card with a personal message about pursuing her own dreams. As I pulled into Aria's driveway, I steeled myself for whatever reception awaited me. Aria opened the door, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Mom, glad you could make it. Her gaze dropped to the gift in my hands. You know she wanted an iPad, right? This is something special, I replied, stepping past her into the house. The backyard was filled with children running and laughing. Emma spotted me immediately, breaking away from her friends to throw her arms around me. Gran, you came. Her genuine delight was a balm to my soul. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, I assured her, hugging her tightly. As the party progressed, I observed Aria and Marcus, noticing the tension between them, the forced smiles, the occasional sharp whispers. They were putting on a show of perfect family harmony, but cracks were showing. While Aria was busy organizing a game, Marcus approached me, a beer in hand. Kathy, he nodded, his expression guarded. Good to see you. Is it? I asked mildly. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Listen, about what you might have overheard at your house. I think we both know what I heard, I interrupted, keeping my voice low. And I think we both know it wasn't a misunderstanding. Marcus looked away, unable to meet my eyes. It's complicated. No, I said. It's actually very simple. You and Aria have plans for my house after I'm gone. The only complication is that I'm still very much alive and have plans of my own. Before he could respond, Emma ran up, grabbing my hand. Gran, come see my presents. As I allowed myself to be led away, I caught sight of Marcus's face, a mixture of confusion and dawning concern. Good. Let him worry. My silent plan was already in motion, and nothing they could do would stop it now. 3 days after Emma's birthday party, Aria showed up unannounced at my front door. Her face was tight with barely contained anger, her knuckles white as she clutched her designer handbag. We need to talk, she announced, brushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door calmly. Hello to you too, Aria. She paced my living room, her heels clicking aggressively against the hardwood floors Frank had installed himself 30 years ago. Finally, she turned to face me. What did you say to Marcus at the party? He's been acting strange ever since. I settled into my armchair, taking my time to respond. I simply acknowledged what I overheard during his last visit. About your plans for my house after I'm gone. Her face paled, then flushed. You were eavesdropping? In my own home? Hardly. Marcus wasn't exactly discreet with his phone conversation. Aria's composure slipped for a moment before she recovered, straightening her shoulders. It's not what you think, isn't it? I'm not going to ask her if she knows we're planning to sell her house as soon as we inherit it. Those were his exact words. You're taking it out of context, she insisted. We were just discussing possibilities, long-term planning. Planning my future without consulting me, I said evenly. Planning to sell the home your father and I built, where you grew up. It's just a house, Mom. Aria said dismissively. And let's be realistic, it's too big for you now. You can't maintain it on your own. Yet I've been doing exactly that for 5 years. She sighed dramatically. This is ridiculous. You're blowing everything out of proportion as usual. Am I? Then why have you been keeping my grandchildren from me? Using them as pawns to punish me for not giving you money. Her eyes narrowed. They're my children. I decide who they spend time with. Yes, you've made that abundantly clear. I kept my voice steady despite the pain her words caused. Just as you've made it clear that I'm only valuable to you for what I can provide, money-free childcare, this house. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you called just to check on me? Not to ask for money or babysitting, but just because you cared about how I was doing. Aria opened her mouth, then closed it again. She couldn't remember and neither could I. You know what? She finally said. I don't have to listen to this. You've clearly made up your mind about me. No, Aria. You've shown me who you are. There's a difference. She stalked to the window, her back to me. So what now? You're going to cut me off completely? Disinherit me? The question hung in the air between us. I studied my daughter, this woman I'd carried in my body, raised with all the love I had sacrificed for repeatedly. Despite everything, a part of me still hoped for reconciliation, for her to show a glimmer of remorse or understanding. I've made some changes, I admitted, to ensure my wishes are respected. She turned, her expression calculating. What kind of changes? That's between me and my lawyer. Her face hardened. You know what? Keep your precious house. Keep your money. I don't need it. This isn't about the house or money, Aria. It's about respect. It's about recognizing that I'm still a person with my own desires and plans for my life. What plans? She scoffed. Sitting here alone watching TV? Waiting for the occasional visit from your grandchildren. Actually, I'm going to Greece in September. The statement stopped her cold. Greece? By yourself? Yes. That's absurd. You're 68 years old. Which means I'd better not waste any more time. Aria stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You've changed. I've woken up, I corrected. She grabbed her purse, heading for the door. This conversation is over. When you come to your senses, give me a call. Aria, I called after her. She paused at the threshold. I love you. I always will. But I won't allow you to treat me like this anymore. She didn't respond, just slammed the door behind her hard enough to rattle the family photos on the wall. I sat in the sudden silence, waiting for the tears to come, but they didn't. Instead, there was a curious sense of peace, of rightness. For too long, I'd allowed my fear of losing my daughter's love, conditional as it was, to dictate my actions and decisions. No more. My phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Zach, my grandson. Gran? Are you okay? His teenage voice cracked with concern. Mom just came home really upset. I'm fine, sweetheart, I assured him. Your mother and I had a disagreement, but it will work out. She said you're being unreasonable. I smiled sadly. Adults sometimes see things differently from each other. It doesn't mean either person is wrong. There was a pause then. She also said you're going to Greece. That's awesome. His genuine enthusiasm warmed my heart. It is, isn't it? Your grandfather and I always wanted to go. Could you maybe send me pictures? When you're there. I'll do better than that, I promised. I'll bring you something special. Cool, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I should go before Mom realizes I'm calling you. After we hung up, I walked through the house, running my fingers along the familiar surfaces. The banister Frank had crafted by hand, the kitchen counters where I'd taught Aria to bake cookies, the window seat where I'd read countless bedtime stories. This house held the story of our family, but it wasn't the only thing that defined me. The confrontation with Aria had been painful but necessary. It had confirmed what I already knew, that the relationship had to change if it was to survive at all. I couldn't control how she responded, but I could control my own actions and choices. I picked up my phone again and dialed. David? It's Mom. I've been thinking about that visit to Seattle. How about next month before my Greece trip? As I made plans with my son, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time it was mine to choose. 1 year later I stood on my back porch, watching guests arrive for my 70th birthday celebration. The garden was in full bloom, the roses Frank had planted decades ago, the new hydrangeas I'd added last fall, and the vegetable patch I'd started on a whim. Everything felt different, and yet somehow more authentic than it had in years. "Need any help, Mom?" David appeared at my side, carrying a tray of lemonade glasses. "I think we're all set," I smiled, taking in the sight of my son, relaxed, happy, and present in my life again. His wife Lisa was arranging food on the picnic table, while their children played tag across the lawn. The past year had transformed everything. My 2-week visit to Seattle had stretched into a month of reconnection. I'd gotten to know Lisa, who was warm and genuine, and built relationships with my grandchildren there. 14-year-old Tyler and 12-year-old Megan. We'd made up for lost time, and in the process healed old wounds. Then came Greece. 2 glorious weeks exploring the islands Frank and I had dreamed of visiting together. I'd felt his presence in the azure waters and whitewashed buildings, in the sunsets and the ancient ruins. I'd returned with hundreds of photos, a journal full of memories, and a newfound confidence in my ability to navigate the world on my own. My watercolor class had become a central part of my life, leading to friendships with other women my age who were also redefining their later years on their own terms. 3 of them were here today, chatting animatedly with my book club friends. "Gran, look who's here," Megan called, pointing toward the garden gate. My heart skipped a beat as I saw Zach and Emma hesitantly entering the yard. Behind them, Marcus hovered awkwardly, his hands in his pockets. I hadn't seen Emma in 6 months, not since the last time Marcus had brought the children to visit against Aria's wishes. Zach had made more efforts, calling regularly and even meeting me for lunch occasionally, showing a maturity beyond his 16 years. I crossed the lawn to greet them, embracing my grandchildren tightly. "I wasn't sure you'd come," I admitted. "We wouldn't miss it," Zach said firmly. "Right, Dad?" Marcus nodded, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "Happy birthday, Kathy. The kids really wanted to be here." "And Aria?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "She's still processing everything. But she knows we're here." I nodded, accepting this reality. The fallout from my decision to change my will had been significant. When Aria had finally discovered that I'd left the house not to her but to a trust that would benefit all my grandchildren equally when they turned 25, with the provision that it couldn't be sold without unanimous consent, she'd been furious. The fact that I'd also documented every loan she and Marcus had taken over the years, with the stipulation that those amounts would be deducted from any inheritance her children might eventually receive, had sent her into a rage. "You've even turned my own children against me," she'd accused during our last confrontation. "No, Aria," I'd replied. "I've simply shown them that actions have consequences. Even yours." We hadn't spoken since, though I'd continued to reach out, sending cards and invitations that went unanswered. "Come meet your cousins," I told Zach and Emma now, leading them toward David's children. The 4 young people eyed each other curiously, connected by blood but separated by years of adult conflicts. "Hey," Tyler said, offering a hand to Zach. "Want to help us set up the volleyball net?" Just like that, the ice was broken. The children drifted away together, finding common ground despite their parents' differences. Marcus approached me hesitantly. "You've done well for yourself, Kathy. The house looks great." "Thank you," I said. "Would you like some lemonade?" He accepted the glass David offered him, then cleared his throat awkwardly. "I should tell you, Aria and I are separating." I absorbed this news with a pang of sadness but not surprise. "I'm sorry to hear that." He shrugged. "It's been coming for a while. The financial pressure, her refusal to work, my resentment. When she realized the house wouldn't be the windfall she'd counted on, something broke." "And the children?" "We'll share custody. Honestly, I think it might be better for them, especially with you back in their lives." Before I could respond, the garden gate opened again. My breath caught as Aria stepped through, looking uncertain and out of place. She'd lost weight, and there was a weariness in her eyes I'd never seen before. Our gazes met across the lawn. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then slowly I walked toward her. "I didn't think you'd come," I said softly. She swallowed hard. I almost didn't. But Zach said. He said I should stop punishing everyone, including myself. Wise beyond his years, I noted. He gets that from you, she admitted reluctantly. Mom, I held up a hand. Not today. Today is for celebration, not apologies or explanations. Relief flickered across her face. Okay. Would you like some cake? David's wife made it. You haven't met Lisa yet. Aria nodded, following me across the lawn. I introduced her to my daughter-in-law, to my friends from painting class and book club, to the new life I'd built while she'd been absent. As the afternoon progressed, I watched my family, fractured and imperfect as it was, begin the slow process of healing. David and Aria had a stilted but civil conversation. The cousins played together as if they'd known each other all their lives. Marcus relaxed enough to join the men at the grill. Later, as we gathered around the picnic table for cake, David clinked his glass for attention. I'd like to propose a toast to my mother, he began, his voice warm with affection. Not just for reaching 70, though that's impressive enough, but for showing us all that it's never too late to reclaim your life and your joy. To Mom, he concluded, raising his glass, who taught us that the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to start over. As glasses were raised around the table, I felt tears prick at my eyes, not from sadness but from profound gratitude. 1 year ago, I'd sat alone at my dining table, excluded and dismissed by my own daughter. Today I was surrounded by love, respect, and the life I'd chosen for myself. Aria caught my eye across the table, her expression a complex mixture of regret, recognition, and something that might, with time and effort, grow into genuine respect. We had a long way to go, she and I. Trust once broken is not easily rebuilt. But today had shown me that even the deepest wounds can begin to heal when we have the courage to stand our ground, and the wisdom to leave the door open for reconciliation. As I blew out the candles on my birthday cake, I didn't make a wish. I didn't need to. Everything I truly needed, self-respect, purpose, joy, authentic connection, I had already claimed for myself. I was no longer waiting for permission to live my life. I was living it, fully, joyfully, and on my own terms. That was the greatest liberation of all.